Hello, Tom.
What's up, Matt? How you been?
Oh man, I'm doing all right. We had a little bit of time off there, an accidental time off.
A couple of weeks there. You make too many commitments, and then I end up stepping over myself.
Yeah, no worries. So you're good now. You're back. Everything's happy.
Well, yeah, I think so. Until next month when things go sideways at the board meeting.
Yeah, gotcha. No, I spend my whole life in that mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found out the other day that like cortisol shuts down your prefrontal cortex, and I said, well, then my fucking prefrontal cortex has got cobwebs in it because like hasn't been used in forever. I'm just basically living in this like constant state of fixing shit, Yeah. Tom's like, yeah,
absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
So what are you getting into these days? What are you up to?
So, man, I've really, I get these crazy little ideas and then go down these side holes. And I think you can appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And on a chance trip to TJ Maxx, they had these little pre-mixed, just add vodka and you've got a Cosmo or something in a jar. And it reminded me of all these old martial art training formulas, your hit fall medicines and you're like, so then I'm like, it'd be kind of cool if you just prepackage those. So I'm doing a training formula for my gym where it's just like, here, if people like it, you start to see. So I think I'm going to make my kids fill the jars because I have absolutely no time to do that, man.
Yeah, I hear you. That's cool. Oh, that's fun.
How about you, man?
I made a pledge to read a chapter of a book a night, and one night into it, I've already failed. So it's not off to a roaring start, but I'm committing to this project, the multidisciplinary project.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of doing, which is funny. It's, it's, the gift that keeps on giving, and the more I learn about it, the more I realize that there's more to do. So it's exciting, and it taps into health. It taps into all curiosities. It taps into everything. So anyway, we got a cool little topic tonight that I actually know a lot of nothing about, and so I'm very excited. I'm very excited to hear more about this. So, you want to just get us going? And
so let's get us going. So we got two great guests on tonight. They come from the Ancestral Project. Andrea and Charlotte are both Shaman. I knew Andrea for a while now, and Charlotte I got to meet at an online ceremony post-COVID. So hopefully we can talk a bit about that. And maybe we should just bring them in, huh?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's say hi.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Charlotte, Dre, how you guys doing?
I'm doing good. How's everyone doing?
Really good. First of all, thank you guys so much for doing this. This is exciting to get to talk to somebody other than just Matt.
Yeah.
Sure. Good to see you.
Awesome.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with the basics? Can you guys give us a little background of the Ancestral Project and kind of how you came into doing what you do before we jump into some of this more detailed stuff?
Right, perfect. Can we thank you for having us here, and would it be okay if we start like we start our ceremonies with a prayer honoring our ancestors?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your show.
Creators, spirits that move through all things, spirit guides, ancestors, allies, and relatives. It is us, and we are one vibration, one heartbeat. And we thank you so much for the breath of life, have this in all of us, in all things, in ourselves. Spirit keepers from the east, be with us. Grant us vision and clarity as we walk along this path so that we do so with gentleness and respect for ourselves and for all of our relations. Spirit keepers from the south, be with us. Fill us with love and compassion for ourselves and for all of our relatives. the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the people of the air, the people of the water, the rock people, the tree people, the plant people, the insect people, the mycelium beings, the virus beings, the bacteria beings, and all of our relations. Spirit keepers from the west be with us. We ask that as the wind blows forth, let it bring forth healing and balance to our bodies, our minds, our spirit, community, and environment into one heartbeat, one vibration. And spirit keepers from the north be with us. Fill us with wisdom to make wise choices. And as we transition from this place to the next, let us do so peacefully and without regret, always remembering to honor the 21 generations that precede us with all the vibrations that we are responsible for creating in this space. Pachamama, so beautiful and radiant, we honor you with deep reverence and respect. And we ask that you remind us never to take more than we need from the space and to always give back more than we take. Ashe, Aho, Asi. Thank you.
It's a very cool start to anything, really. I'll be completely honest. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So the origin story is of Ancestral Project. One day Charlotte woke up and she said, "I want to change the world." She called me and we decided to do that. No, we. I mean, it was a series of circumstances, but this was all divine intervention by the universe. I was in the cannabis industry, and I had been disenchanted by the industry. I was ready to move on, and I had this conversation with myself that what do I want to do next? And my side gig at the time was shamanism, practicing shamanism and supporting people in healing themselves. But it really was not something that I could sustain a private school education for my daughter and a lifestyle that I wanted to lead. But I said, well, whatever, I'm going to do the thing that makes my heart sing. So 3 days after I made that declaration, I said, I'm going to just leave it in the hands of the universe. This star being comes into my life. We have a phenomenal conversation. It ends up a couple of days later, we're at a conference with all these people of color who are communicating the consistent same conversation around that they've been in spaces that were non-ordinary states of expansion have been created, but they were no one there that looked like them. And at some point there was some spiritual bypass, and there was someone telling them yeah, I know you're enduring structural racism, but just get over it. And that caused a lot of harm. And it was like a room full of people all saying the same story. So we decided to do something about that. Well, let's just say the universe used us as an instrument to do something about that. And once we said yes and surrendered, it's just been a rocket ship ever since then.
Charlotte, you want to add anything to that?
No, that's accurate.
Yeah. Hard act to follow.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's great. So, don't mind me asking, what was the conference you were at that group of people were kind of in the same spot?
It was a people of color psychedelic collective. And I think the conference was called Elysian.
I mean, don't you love this day and age where we have groups that are this specific? It's awesome. It is fantastic to me that we can kind of find different tribes for different reasons. And it's just really, I can't imagine any other time in human history that this was even possible. Right. So.
And I think this is sort of a return for humanity from a time we came into this place where we're all so interconnected because of the internet, because of modern forms of travel, that we can have all of this intense cross-cultural intersectional experiences. And that a lot of the work that we're doing is coming back to ancestral ways of being and coming back into tribal ways of being when you did exist in communities of shared cosmology, of shared values, of shared origin story, and shared ritual as well. And that's a lot of what we are looking to come back to through this work.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting way of describing it. I've never heard anybody kind of frame it like that, but it's absolutely right. I guess the more interconnected you get, the more you look like your ancestors had, or at least you have the access that your ancestors had, just on a much smaller scale, or in our case, a much larger scale. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. I don't know if you guys have heard the Dunbar number thing, but we've talked about it on the show a couple of times, and it's like this fascinating idea that we're hardwired to only connect with like whatever. What is it, Tom? Like 281?
Yeah, it's a small
like some
little
like
group
really
of people.
Huh?
Yeah, it's about 100 people.
Yeah, right. So like you got this concept where you're only meant to DNA like transact with this many people, and you could do that before you get to Starbucks in the morning these days, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's a really important concept because it helps us understand the motivation behind all the mythologies that we believe today, like capitalism, socialism, or any other most of these religious constructs or mythologies that we create, right? And what makes our species so unique is that we can take things that are just constructs, that are just ideas, and make them our reality. Like no other species that we know of on this planet has the ability to say, like, I'm just going to think this thing and then create it, right? To create and make it true, right? And make it true for, when we were tribes, we gathered in about 100 people. Then we started, we created, nationalities and then we had like religious beliefs, which, transcended those nationalities, and that aligned larger groups of people in cooperation. But at the end of the day, most of these cultures that we have wrapped around these ideas, we're forgetting that we gave life to these words. We gave power to these words, right? So we don't have to, in some ways, take them so seriously. Like we don't have to use them as an excuse to kill other people or oppress others.
Yeah.
So we have a
Fair
different
point,
right? It's just something some shit we made up,
Yeah.
Yeah, that book *Sapiens* that Tom and I just talked about, I think last show or something.
Couple back, yeah,
it goes through that evolution of us as primates. Starting out one way and kind of moving up to where we're at now. And honestly, I'd never seen anybody lay it out like that before, and it really, in some ways, makes me feel a lot better about where we're at because you can kind of see why it's happening and kind of maybe not judge it as hard, but understand the underlying causes of a lot of these things, and then you could work towards a more, I guess, pragmatic and calm solution rather than being so reactive about it. But on the other side, it's like, how have we only come this far? We've been at this for a really fucking long time. Like, how are we still only this far down? So I was of mixed mind coming out of that, but it was interesting to see it kind of laid out in an ultra condensed form to see how we got here,
Yeah. It's funny. I was just listening. It's funny. *Sapiens* seems to be a book I listen to over and over again. I have my 12-year-old. We're having
nice.
this conversation again. And I think one of the issues is that we're not really into big history. We're into these very limited perspectives of history instead of looking at our species from the beginning to now, which is really helpful. Because I do agree with you. If you look at it from that really broad point of view, that's the condor eagle perspective. That in shamanism we have what's an eagle condor perspective, where you step back and you see things from a very macro perspective. Our species really, we're doing a lot better than we did 70,000 years ago. I'm pretty sure there's no one who's listened to this who has this as hunter gatherers. We're really a hunter gatherers. We really weren't. We were like hunters. We were like scavenger gatherers.
Right.
Years ago,
right.
It was fun. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's good stuff.
So this interest got you guys connected, and like what was sort of step one for you all? Like what was the getting out of the gate thing that you guys got this on this journey, and then kind of follow up would be like, how do you proceed to where you're at now?
Well, I think from my perspective, step one was, we both took it to the medicine, right? We our immediate instinct was like, okay, we are very too smart, very intelligent people. We have a deep sense of awareness, but we are babies to this conversation. However, there's allies that are, 65 million years older than us, have a tremendous amount of wisdom. Why don't we let them drive this conversation? And I think those two things, like, acknowledging, that our ability to surrender and get out of the way of this process was going to be the most important part of that process. And then we just, Charlotte and I are in ceremony on most weeks of the year, 3 times a week. So we're in a state of working on our stuff, right? So it's not a performative conversation. It's not like, no disrespect to other professions, right, where you get a degree, right? You don't actually practice half the stuff that you learn. Right? You're giving advice about stuff you don't actually do. I mean, it doesn't work that way. If you are projecting your own bullshit on other people, it's going to cause harm, and it's very evident. You can see the real time. There are data points, like, because we like this, the Tim Ferriss of us like this, these data points where there's real time metrics into charlatans and shamans. You can see those who are causing tremendous amount of harm, and you can see others who, like, there's just an explosion in evolution in that human being and their experience when they are supported with a healthy setting, a healthy support. And the healers themselves are humble enough to know that they are not the healer. They are just, or the facilitators themselves. They're not actually the healer. They're just lucky enough to be in this position of supporting people through their evolution.
You know what? I got to take a half side step here real quick and just mention something that I love about having conversations with people of your background, your knowledge, is that your language is so deliberate and articulate that it's really soothing on the other side. And I feel like that's something we just all forgot how to do. Like, it's very hard for me to imagine the last conversation I had that was like candid, yet soft, yet informative, yet, reassuring. Like, it's all sort of a package. You get where I'm going with this? Like, it just feels, it feels very ingestible, and no pun intended, but like, it feels like very ingestible. Like, I can consume this vibe, I can process it, I can react to it, but it's not going to hurt me. It's like just information and just for my benefit. Right.
Yeah.
And like, that's hard to do. And it's instantly different from other narratives that you hear in the day when you hear somebody talking like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. We do our best. Yeah. There are definitely times where I am definitely not the most eloquent speaker.
But I mean, so much of what you just said, though, set and setting, I mean, getting into somebody's vibration is real, can be really bad, and maybe not the best setting, and sometimes it could be the exact opposite. So I think that if you have this sort of like very calm, logical way of presenting information, that just kind of greases the groove for a better set. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say for me, it's interesting you mentioned logic, because we just came from a retreat. We also are all in continuous training. So we have our teachers that we're learning from, and we just came back from Ecuador on a retreat. And it was one of the interesting things I observed. The people that we were sitting in ceremony, there was a tremendous sense of calm and peace with them. And there was not a lot of, like, when they did talk, it was a lot of jokes. They were laughing all the time. But then it was like 34 or 5 of us in our cohort, and there was so much logical communication, trying to understand everything, trying to put everything in a box. What did you see last night in ceremony? Like, a lot of anxiety in the group. And this is something I'm also noticing. This is kind of like the sidestep, but add to it. I'm also noticing that therapists, so right in the Western cosmology around these medicine, it's the therapists who are actually the people who are supporting people. Like, these are people that have some authority or supposed to be some awareness. What I notice in shamanism is that therapists actually sometimes tend to be my most challenging folks, because they're always coming to it with this left brain lens. And they forget that, there's 2 sides of your brain. There's the heart side, the feeling side. These experiences are ineffable. They're not intended to be described. And, English, quite frankly, is a blunt language. It's like it's a blunt tool to try to explain this very nuanced experience. Yeah. Anyway.
That's that Yeah, I wish I had more conversations like that, man. To be honest with you. Yeah, just because like I like pulling it apart like that because, and especially lately, I've gotten really into the psychology of underlying expectations, right? And like the difference between expert and wisdom, right? Like an expert is stuck in underlying assumptions all the time. Wisdom, however, goes past that and it sort of deconstructs those underlying assumptions and says, well, why? And this is Tom and I my little latest rant, this metacognition, thinking about thinking, right? And like, how are you deconstructing your thought process, not just your thoughts? And once you realize that thinking about your thought process is really the same as saying, what the fuck are these underlying assumptions that I've been bound to that are basically blocking me from doing anything outside of those boxes? And so one thing that's kind of opened me up to is, just changing the way I'm like processing and whatnot. So one of the things that instantly struck me about you guys as guests, aside from I know very little about what you guys do, is just that it's like another step on that journey for me to say, okay, what's another thing I can do to kind of like bring myself more into focus? And I don't know what the end focus is, but I know every day, every journey, every step forward is sort of a little bit of a focus there. And, it wasn't until you really start pulling those assumptions apart that work can even begin.
I think what you're talking about sounds like the decolonization process.
Yeah, right.
You're decolonizing yourself. And
it's just a different area.
The things that you've been convinced are truth, the constructs that you buy into, and then how you project and replicate them into the world and in yourself as well. Like it always starts with, we always ask people to like look at the ways in which they're oppressing themselves. What parts of yourself are you shunning or shaming or shutting off because of what you've been told is appropriate and respectable and productive and successful, and whatever other constructs have been informed by patriarchy and white-bodied supremacy. So yeah, it sounds like you're in the decolonization process for yourself, which is dope.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks.
I like this term metacognition. That's kind of dope. I just already Googled it.
There's 1,000 rabbit holes you can go down on that one, man. I'll tell you what. Yeah. Funny enough, though, I'm working on another project about metacognition. That's how it's kind of at the tip of my tongue right now. And it's about cross-disciplinary thinking. And I might actually ask you to come back on a different show at some point in the future, because really what that show is about, or that thought process, it's just like an interview series right now, is about how do you connect new information to old wisdom and reapply it in a broader sense, right? You talked about eagle vision, I'm like geeking out over that, like since you said it, because I'm like, fuck, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like you got to be able to do that. And the fact that you have a word for it is actually just even more proof that I'm onto something with this other idea, because people from all disciplines call it different things. Cross-disciplinary thinking in academia is called orthogonal thinking in psychology, right? It's the exact same thing, different language to describe the same exact thing, right? So that's why I like talking to guys like you groups like you, because like what you guys are doing touches on so many things. It's like endless, and it's fascinating to me. So sorry, I digress.
No, that's good.
Got real excited about that for a second.
That's good. It's interesting because we've had private conversations, Charlotte and I, about, and I mean, if I say this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm mood. Like, I personally, in our personal lives, we're finding it more and more challenging to actually be in conversations and space with people who actually don't do medicine work, as in our internal group. Because what I find is that people who are not doing medicine work, their conversation is always right here, right? The inability to like see a larger perspective out of your limited cognitive abilities and awarenesses is, I feel like it seems to be more challenging for people who have not had a transcendent or death experience, right? So like there's other ways to expand your states of consciousness and non-order. You can do it through breath work, ultra marathon running, deep meditation and yoga. For sure, there's ways to do this. Some people have non-ordinary states of expansion. What do you call it? Spontaneous states of spontaneous non-oriented states of expansion. Some people, what is it called?
Psychosis.
Right, psychosis, right? So there's definitely people out there, but there's a sweet spot. There's something so powerful about when you're able to transcend this very limited perspective that you have and consider all awarenesses. Kim Wilber's really great at this. I don't know if you've ever dug into any of his stuff. He's got a whole thesis wrapped around transpersonal thought around these things, and like this awareness about how all of us have related to these ideas from the beginning.
I don't know that from Ken Wilber. I know other things from him, but yeah, I will. I'm looking him up now too. Put him on the post-show 5-hour Google hole that I'm going to send down. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Psychology and Spirituality. Check that one out. It's a really good book.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you guys are on this road. Like, how did you get it? I mean, was shamanism the sort of the North Star, and then the rest of it came along with that journey, or like walk me through how you get into more of the practice stuff? Because I didn't know until recently that shamanism was a thing, right? Like, I just, it's a word you hear, but like to your point, like if you don't. You know what I mean? Like, and then now I'm like, obviously we just talked about this little journey I'm going on, but like you find out things like this, you're like, oh, that's a thing. I did not actually consider that was a real thing.
Yeah, dope. I appreciate you saying it. So for me, what I'll say is, when I am speaking about my cosmology, right? The cosmos I create. So for every being, there is a different way to practice shamanism. It is a practice, right? So, there's people who call themselves shamans. I don't call myself a shaman. If people who come to me and get support, they can choose to call me whatever they want. But I am in the practice of shamanism. And so for me, what shamanism is to be of service. Like my main goal is to be of service to the collective, right? And I have elders and ancestors, spirit guides who have kind of guided me through that process. But it's the oldest practice that humans have ever. It's the oldest practice. Like 40,000 years ago, we, as humans, as hunter-gatherers, had an animist tradition, that relationship. We didn't see a tree as a thing. We saw it as a being, and we developed a relationship with it. And we, just like we develop relationships with each other, right? And the hills and the mountains and the elements were all had all vital forces, and we related. And we're in right relationship. And so ultimately what shamans do is they support people in getting in right relationship with themselves and all the other beings that are here to support them, right? Yeah. And the last thing I want to say that is, this goes into why we're called Ancestral Project, because there's this tendency to have this romanticism around what we the so-called idea of indigenous people or native peoples, right? And we, the truth is that all humans at some point were hunter-gatherers and practiced some form of animism, right? Now, look, we are written. How long have we been writing things down? So that like there's a limit. Like we have to make some assumptions here. But based off of the I'm not going to even try to pronounce the word. But based on the evidence that we have right now, it strongly supports this idea that that this was not a unique practice to be native to North America or South America or Africa. This was in Europe. They did this. They were practicing these things before they were colonized. When in Australia, they were practicing these. In Southeast Asia, they were practicing these ways before humans began to start conquering each other and then saying, "Your way is bad. Though your traditions are evil, but let me give you these good old religions to kind of control you and manipulate you into thinking a certain way."
My introduction to shamanism was actually through a very academic lens. I was an anthropology major. And so, I kind of like laugh/am in grateful astonishment when we are like doing medicine work and I have that like quick reminder that I used to read about these things and like watch National Geographic in high school, and that's how I knew what the combo marks were when I saw them on the person that eventually connected me and Dre, was that I had seen a show about indigenous groups in the Amazon and the wild, crazy medicines and things that they would take and make themselves throw up and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, my initial introduction was like very through a Western academic anthropological lens. My introduction to working with medicine was through mainly social and celebratory use. I was like a little rave kid for a little.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say mine came in a rave somewhere in the mid '90s in a warehouse.
In a
somewhere.
warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's in some
That's when I started.
House,
Yeah,
with people, spitting fire outside, and
totally.
We would dance for hours, and now I understand that that's a form of therapy in itself, a form of ancestral connection, a form of releasing trauma through somatic practice. I didn't have all that language for it then. And
yeah,
then,
you just did it because it felt right, and you just didn't know, you couldn't enunciate. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah, and also I would say, in the absence of rites of passage, we recreate rites of passage. And so in our society, there is not really a coming of age ceremony or ritual that is practiced at a communal level. And what happens is that like you seek that out. I think it's innate in humans to look for the things that connect us and initiate us into a group or initiate us into a society. And unfortunately for our society, much of that happens through the abuse of substances, and this idea of getting really heavily intoxicated and the first time that you get to like sneak off and drink, and the first time that you sneak off and smoke weed, and so in the absence of initiation, I sought those things out. And, I'm grateful that I was always more drawn to the plants than I was to the plants in smokable form than I was in alcohol form, since most everything has a plant origin. And yeah, that just, having a really early relationship with cannabis. I started smoking when I was 14, really just gave me an open mind. I also had a parent that was a hippie and another parent that immigrated from Jamaica and had practiced, was a practicing Rastafari. And so there was a lot of conversation about connection with the earth, but still outside of a communal context. And so I still went to seek it out on my own. But yeah, I'm grateful for that early connection with the medicine. And then it was a winding path through my early 20s into my late 20s until I found really what it was, what the ancestral breadcrumbs were leading me to, which was shamanic practice.
That's awesome. You hit a nerve with something you said that just literally happened to me on the way to school this morning, walking my daughter. She's like, I have to do a report on one of these couple things that are bad for you. And one of them was alcohol. One of them was tobacco. Then the next one was cannabis. And I was like, whoa. Depressed. Yeah. I was like, wait a second. Yeah. And I was
tobacco one, right?
Yeah,
tobacco is like the first medicine you work with in the path, and in across like so many traditions too. Another one of the medicines that was heavily colonized and then commodified, which is the pattern that happened with tobacco, with happening with cannabis, even happening with psilocybin now, but also with things like chocolate and tea and yoga and Buddhism, and all these things are like wellness trends, but are really steeped in deep ancestral wisdom.
Yeah. Well, you know what I think was funny about how they framed that is like, it was automatically bad. Like everybody who has alcohol is bad, or everybody that has tobacco or everything. Like nicotine's one of my favorite nootropics ever. And when used in like moderation and strategically and intentionally, nicotine's a wonderful compound. It's fantastic. Like now you don't have to smoke a pack of Marlboro Reds to do that, you know, and I certainly don't, but like just to demonify, whatever the word I'm looking for is, something just because it is a little bit weird. And cannabis, I mean, but she's 11. They're teaching this shit to my 11-year-old that this stuff is bad. And you're not like, this is a very myopic view of these compounds.
I mean, I was afraid to do like, I think the first I had MDMA and then eventually LSD, but LSD, I was like, I will take a corner of the corner.
Oh my God, I had to say the same thing. Yeah.
Because they told me in there that my entire reality is going to melt away and I'm going to lose my mind and like also I might die. And then I had it and I was like, this is so chill. And everyone around me was using a way deeper and also beautiful journey. And I was like, well, now I'm bored and I want more. And, I eventually got to like work up to, a true journey. But and even tobacco, right? Like even the way that we talk about these medicines, right? As like, what is the relationship that we're in with them? And how do we like commune with them as a being and as a spirit? Like the spirit of tobacco as a medicine, as a plant, is a beautiful spirit that helps with clarity and connection and focus and decreased anxiety and like all of these other things, but we still want to be in these like measured, controlled relationships with these beings when, as Dre said, like they have much greater wisdom than we do.
But imagine your first interaction with tobacco was that conversation that you just had, versus write a report on how fucked up cannabis is or how fucked up tobacco is. Like you have a fundamental, at a time where your brain is still in formation, like these neural pathways are literally cemented in. Like and if I don't intervene in this shit, she's going to have these thoughts until she's on a couch with her shrink or in a conversation like this, right? You know what I mean? Like, and that's not a reality that we have to do. And that's the frustrating part. Right? Like we don't have to choose this reality, but it's just sort of baked in all around us. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's so powerful what you're talking about. And, we've been having conversations about socializations and, the power of groupthink, right? It can be really damaging. So you think about all the people who are sharing this information and knowledge around DARE, like just say no to drugs, right?
Sure.
None of these people had any data to support. Someone told them, and then they jumped on the bandwagon, and they told others, and it became a reality. And so much of what we were taught in our generation was complete, utter nonsense.
Totally.
Complete, just not true. And it just makes me wonder. I don't know what was going on by our elders that was so comfortable with lying and not having any facts before they shared any knowledge or wisdom and information. I can tell you from my perspective, I got caught up in patriarchy, being a patriot and assuming. I remember one time that you guys are gonna laugh at me, but I remember one time having an argument with someone who was telling me not to eat McDonald's, and I was saying, if it was bad for you, our government would not allow it.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
That's cute. Well, that's adorable.
Yeah. No, you're right. We're going to laugh at you just a little bit. But like Tom said, man, we've all been there, man. There's not, who amongst us has not had that same thing, man? I can, all kinds of shit I used to tell myself was true that I'm looking back on, what the fuck was I thinking? Like that was clearly wrong. Like, and then you look back and you're like, well, no kidding. I mean, Tom and I's first episode was on orgasmic meditation, right? And one of the things that made that such a fun episode is we both were looking at it like, how could you not think the people behind this are in jail? Like this obviously did not
this
go
is
right.
rife for abuse. Rife.
Like it was just one of those
like the Bikram Kundalini
stuff. We had an episode on her too, man. She was like another one of those people. You're like, as an outsider looking in, I don't want to play, Tuesday morning quarterback, but like, fuck? I mean, that had signs of bad written all over it. Like, I don't know how any of you did not.
I mean, we can all say the same thing about like gangs. Like from the outside looking in, like, do I want to get jumped into but like when you are a person who has experienced so much trauma that has led to so much disconnection and you're being sold a message of like, you will feel you were accepted here, you will be loved here, you'll be supported. You're like, okay. I mean, because we're seeing the exact same
baby.
psychedelic space, right? Is that there's like all of this potential for abuse because a lot of facilitators are not of the mindset that like, I'm just here as a bridge for you to connect with the medicine and your inner teacher, but that there begins this like glorification around individuals that get put as seen as more expert or more intelligent than the spiritual modalities that they're working with. What was that dude who was part of the last January when those guys stormed the Capitol?
Oh, the QAnon shaman?
Yeah, and like he had well, I don't know if he has, but he had like a community on Facebook and he facilitated psychedelic journeys, right? So like there is absolutely so much space for this to get to just be the Wild West. Because if you don't integrate the medicine well, and if you are not existing within community, you could like go the opposite of ego dissolution and have like massive like ego boosting, right? Because you're like, I am a divine being. I am God. Like, you know?
And I'm the only divine being.
And I'm the only divine being, right? And like miss the interconnectivity aspect of it. So I think like when you get to a certain place in a healing journey, you can be like, oh yeah, like massive red flags over there. But, you know, I can think back on like so many shitty relationships that I was in that now I would be like, massive red flags run the other direction. And then I was like, I'm going to fix this person this person's going to take care of me and blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's also like all of us, more people speaking out about those situations. So there is more education and warning. Dre was talking about like the shaman versus charlatan issue, and we have a free download on our site that's just like questions that you should be asking a potential facilitator. Like you're going to say,
that's a great idea.
Here's some things that you should know. And if a person seems sketchy about answering these questions, that should also be a red flag for you to maybe go and find a different facilitator, because people get so desperate for healing that they will forgo their intuition and all of the red flags they're seeing because they put their power in another person to heal them.
Yeah. You know, I want to say this because that was one thing that I enjoyed working with you. You wanted to make sure I was the right fit for you. You were the right fit for me. You must have spoken to me for at least an hour and a half before we agreed to any ceremonies.
Yeah. That's true. And then you did an intake that what did that intake take you, about 2 hours to fill out that intake?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was one of the most thorough intakes. I've been to, specialists, MDs and filled out shorter intakes.
Yeah.
So
I like that data component of it. I mean, that seems like a super healthy amount of information to get from somebody. And I'd love to know how that translates. Like, what does that help you guys do? Because on one side, it seems very clinical and very, data driven. On the other side, I assume you're using that very strategically. So I'd be curious what that bridge is.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll explain our process to kind of. So first of all, here's the secret sauce.
Can I just give a caveat before you start explaining the process? Because I feel like what is helpful context and foundation for the process is that, like, yes, there are some fundamental things that we need to know to keep people safe. And also the process is more for the community member that's coming to sit than it is for us to like tailor or curate their ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's it. So, yeah, the process starts as 3 parts. The first part is people are doing a thorough inventory of themselves, right? They're looking at their physical, mental, spiritual environment in their community. And we're teaching them essentially to ask a different question, right? To consider their life in a different way and ask it and spend some time really thoroughly doing an inventory of self. So really most of that data is for them, right? It's for their awareness and understanding, beginning to cultivate an awareness. And the intention, the hope is that they will use this blueprint throughout their life to constantly come back and self-reflect on these things and see where the needle is moved. Then, the basic overall question is like, what are the beliefs, habits, people, and ideas that no longer serve you, that you're excited to let go, right? And then we have a ceremony. We set an intention. We support you in setting an intention through that hour conversation that Tom talked about. And then once we come to ceremony, now it's about developing an awareness about how you are now practicing all those trauma responses over and over again. You're replaying it over and over again. You are the person that's creating your own suffering in most of these cases. And so what are you going to do differently now that you've been made aware, which is the integration process, which is asking what are the habits, beliefs, people, and ideas that I'm excited to attract now? What am I going to do differently? What am I going to attract in my life? But it's less about you doing it. It's less about you like trying to fix yourself, more about you having awareness of where you want to go, what truth you want to live, and now about creating that reality for yourself.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's a lot of information. It almost seems like even with no ceremony at all, this is a very good experience to kind of put yourself through, to kind of iron your own stuff out. It seems very helpful just in general.
The ceremony begins before you actually get to ceremony, especially with combo. I feel like super frequently people will come and they're like, all of this crazy shit just happened in the last couple of days. Touched on every single trigger I have, and like every difficult conversation tried to like make its way in during my preparation. So it's like the purging begins and the clarity begins before you even get to the medicine.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you go through this questionnaire and like you get all this ironed out. And then in that conversation, you kind of get to know each other. Like what comes next?
Well, then you have your ceremony, right? And then you have you're having a conversation, a direct conversation with the name you chose before your parents were born, right? You're getting in touch with that true essence of self, right? And learning to communicate. So the first thing one of the reasons why non-ordinary states are so important is because, for the most part, not all medicines work this way, but you're having a direct conversation with all aspects of self, right? Versus being filtered through the front of your brain with filters of information through this limited perspective of who you are. Now you're in that ego condor perspective. You're like over this to step back and be like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, interesting. Why does that thing make me feel that way? Oh, it makes me feel unworthy. Well, when was the first time that happened? Oh, it happened when I was like 7. Oh, and my dad said this to me. Oh, okay. And so you connect with that part of yourself. You heal yourself. And then once you leave that ceremony, now that you have this awareness, you're going to have to create some new habits, beliefs, and ideas, and support, some nourishment, right? So in your assessment, you might have realized that, I'm really good at like managing my food and my physical fitness, but I don't have a lot of loving, nourishing relationships around me. And so now I'm going to call into attracting that into my life, right? Just to support the cultural worldviews that I am now creating in myself, the changes I'm creating. So just as an example.
Interesting. And now, do you find people struggle with that integration, that post-ceremony sort of new way, or is that just sort of like people are eagerly jumping in after going through the experience?
I feel like, actually just this afternoon I had a conversation with someone. I feel like we have to frequently remind people to be patient and gentle with themselves during that process, because the expectation, or maybe the hope, But also the way that these medicines are communicated about in the mainstream right now is that it's going to be some magic pill and you're going to wake up the next morning and be a brand new person. And
it certainly is communicated that way.
That's it, walk out the door, right? And which is very much, in line with what communication is around prescription drugs, is like, you don't actually have to do anything. The only action you need to take is to take this pill. And once you do that, then you'll be better. And these medicines really require a relationship of reciprocity in which you're like making offering back to the medicine through your daily actions and the way that you embody the lessons that are bestowed on you. But like, imagine somebody who is 50 years old doing ceremony for 49 years of their life, or for, let's say 42 when they came into consciousness. They were reacting to life in one way, and then those ways, those trauma responses, become patterns, which become like facets of your personality. And so then to imagine that your entire personality that's been built up over 40 plus years is going to shift overnight, or that it's going to be super easy, is not necessarily a supportive expectation to have going in. But I feel like these medicines give you the energy boost and like a shift in perspective enough to see why making these changes would be supportive, or why they feel good, or wanting to prolong the remembering that we do in ceremony.
Yeah.
And with your practice, do you find that people are sort of more on the one and done scale where they just don't come back, or do you find people like get really into it and this becomes like a very habitual sort of practice on themselves? You know what I mean? Because you guys say you're in ceremony several times a week. So obviously I would assume you guys are, maybe not in your circles, but in the broader populace, the outliers, even in this space, right? 3 times a week for like, say me, would be an extreme uptick since I've not done it at all. Right. Mm-hmm. So
I think also though, when Dre says that we're in ceremony 3 times a week, like there are times in the year in which we are, we have 2 combo ceremonies where we're supporting other folks and, maybe some other type of ceremony, but also that like we sit with ourselves in ceremony in some capacity every day, like, trying to live life as ceremony. Not necessarily taking ourselves to like a super expanded state of consciousness or doing that with medicine, but at least like taking time to be at our altars and be in reverence of ourselves and of our ancestors, and always like taking care of ourselves. I would say it's a mixture. Some people are really on the path. Some people, come once a year. We're, big proponents of integration. So it's also about like not putting some expectation on the schedule that you're sitting, but like really listening.
I didn't mean to imply that, but I guess I was just curious, like in a macro scale, like, for me, it's almost like a muscle memory. Like I use, I microdose and I use LSD, and I really like that. It has helped me get a lot clearer with a lot of things in my life, but like that became a muscle memory to me. So some days when I didn't dose that morning, I still can put myself in that state because I know how to, right? I've practiced the art of just shifting into that space, right? It doesn't last as long as if I'm chemically assisted, obviously, but like I can get to, if I need to critically think about something, I will downshift into that position, figure this thing out, and then I'll let it go and I'll come out when I come out, right? But here's the thing that makes me want to keep the practice going, because that muscle memory is so effective in what I'm using it for. And I'm using this so specifically that like, I can see if I jumped into the Cambo practice, like I'd be like, oh, like if it providing, it goes where I think it would go, that would be something I'd want to maybe do more than a few times, right? Like it would be a recurring thing, less of a, oh, I'm just going on vacation for this one, experience, and that's going to change my life, right? Like it's not, you know.
I don't know, Tom. Would you keep coming back to get burned and throw up in a bucket?
You-
How
you
often
know
are you
what?
coming through for that?
Yeah.
You're talking to somebody that has more than 48 hours of tattoo on him.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, the ceremonies themselves, because we did 3 of them, what was so special, and I really appreciate Dre saying, yeah, you'll be good for a couple of years.
Mhm.
I don't think any of us expected these years, but but within it, I'm still thinking back to things that, no pun intended, came up during those ceremonies. Because to your point, 100%, there's still little pitfalls that I see that, like, oh, I had this thought again,
Mhm.
or I'm looking back at something I tried to let go of. I can't do that.
Right.
So sitting with that and going like, no, we did a whole thing to let me make peace with that. Now,
But
make
you only
peace
did
with
3 of them. Like, I mean, that's kind of what I was driving at. Like, if I have these problems like you had, and I let them go, but a couple years later they're back. Like, it's time to make an appointment with Dre.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Like,
100%.
like I'm not like waiting around. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't like, oh well, I did it once. I don't. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, yeah, but what I would also say is, so, these practices are less about the tool. Let's say what the tool is, ayahuasca, mushrooms, is more about the practice, right? So what you typically see is, yes, there's times where I still have anger, or I still find myself in a conversation that I thought I've resolved, or my dad's coming up again. Like, we just went to Ecuador, and I was like, I spent more energy on my dad than he spent on raising me, but I'm still going through these things for a while. So what I will say is this: a couple of things. The difference is, I noticed that because I have this very heightened state of awareness, that I'm aware of this 1 cheeseburger now, not 3. You know what I mean? I'm able to make a transition and shift a lot quicker and go back to my practices. And what we typically see in people who sit in ceremony with us is they're not just sitting fiddling their thumbs after this. They're adding tools. They're adding yoga. They're adding breath work. They're adding meditation to their life. They may have been a yogi, but now they're more intentional with their yoga or their meditation, or the 1,000 other opportunities to integrate. They dance more. They're more compassionate with their lovers. They're moving out of relationships that are no longer toxic. So so many of the stressors that were causing them to get right back in that situation, there's less of it. They're not eating the toxic foods that make them feel like shit and depressed. And then when they feel shitty and depressed, then they project it onto their lover. They're not doing that as much.
Right. You're removing those underlying sort of, yeah. So I didn't know how deep we wanted to go down this, but since we already opened Pandora's puke bucket, I want to hear a little bit about the actual, what do we talk? What is this? I don't know anything about this. Like, are we allowed to talk about it? I just want to know what we're talking about here. Yeah. I mean,
it's one of the few powerful shamanic medicines that have not been commodified or commercialized, and are not illegal, right?
that's great.
Combo is from the green tree monkey frog, or the Medusa bicolor, and the secretions from that frog skin are what we use to put on to expose to your lymphatic system, and that causes you to have all 5 of your immune system responses to all the same time react and purge any toxins, any negative or stale energies into your belly, which is why people are drinking 2 liters of water. Usually, well, there's different styles of combo, or there's combo and there's sapo. But in our style, people will drink 2 liters of water, and then they purge that water out into a bucket. They let go of their story into a bucket. And that process takes, from the time we put the medicine on someone, and when I say put the medicine on, so, we blister the skin. We take a small incense, and we very quickly blister the skin, and it is a little tiny blister, and then we expose that blister to the lymphatic system. The medicine can get in there, and within 5 to 6, 8 minutes, the person has a really deep purge. They may purge for maybe 5 to 6 minutes. It might be feel a little longer than that. And then they usually take like a 40-minute nap, right? We tuck them in, we spray some nice vest, maybe we sing some Icaros to them, and they tuck them in, and then they're refreshed and they go about their way. They go on their way in a couple hours later. And then what we encourage them to do is, okay, part of your integration is don't jump right back on that cell phone or to the social media or to the challenging debates that you have or the toxic relationships. Like, give yourself another 12 hours to kind of ease back into all those responsibilities so you can really begin to, reflect. Because integration process, for me, always has some challenges because you're aware of some new thing, right? Then for me, the first thing I have to do is, now that I'm aware of this thing, to be aware, to move at the pace of my slowest parts, not try to, okay, I'm aware of this thing and now I'm going to just fix it, right? To be gentle and be like, okay, it's okay. Now, and we're going to begin to gently, okay, I'm going to go to Tom's and go to the cryo tank and suffer once a week. And then maybe that'll be, every day, at some point.
Yeah, no, so that's great. So that's actually a little different than I was thinking. So this whole process, once you actually obviously we talked about the prelude to this and the lead up, but the actual ceremony itself, it seems pretty quick. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's
so Matt, my first time, Dre did his thing. He stepped back. I looked at Charlotte. I said, "How long?" And then I grabbed the bucket.
Yeah,
it was.
You did. You were like a pro purger. You popped quickly.
Yeah.
I'm good at throwing up. I mean, I don't know if that's a life skill, but
yeah, right. Put it on your CV. Yeah.
I think also, time when you're in an expanded state or in a very uncomfortable place.
That time dilation is amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily line up to our everyday understanding of time. So you're like, 15 minutes. When you're like, 15 minutes of purging. That might feel long.
Yeah.
And beautiful, but longer.
But longer, yeah. Yeah, and I can't say the closest I think I've ever gotten. We did a shamanic breathing session at a thing a couple of weeks ago, and by the clock it was 40 minutes, but I swear to God we were there for 2 days. Like, it was like that was not, but like that's as close as I got. But man, I was absolutely on another planet, and all I was doing was breathing. There was nothing happening. Yeah.
Now, there's all kinds of factors of how long it takes for a person to purge, but I will say one really important element to any of these ceremonies is surrender. Like the ability to be like relax, release, and allow yourself to surrender to these medicines. The more you tense up and try to fight the medicine or anticipate it, the longer it's going to take, right? And with the medicine like combo, you are going to purge. That is 100% what's happening in this situation with us. Now, other people have different ways of doing the medicine, and that's their business. But there's no one who's coming to combo ceremony who's not going to purge and leave your story in your bucket.
Right. So get to the point faster. Is it like, let it go, man, buddy? It's going to happen. Don't fight it.
Well, Matt, it seems like every stage of the process too. So even the intake.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about the diet, right? So that is like, I got to surrender to this whole process. Yeah.
And there's a food component to it as well.
Oh, not just food, but a diet of anything that's toxic. I'll let them talk about it, but yeah.
Charlie, you want to take it, or you want me to jump on?
I can start. I mean, I think it's like about giving yourself the space to come into ceremony primarily with your energy, like having spent time in your inner world and not like eating foods that put us in a heightened or extra inflamed state, and not having interactions with people that are triggering and always difficult to communicate with, and like not watching the news and not being on social media and not having sex with yourself or with others, like really like shutting down the external world to the extent that you can, and coming into ceremony like in a state of calm and already having done, you know, an intentional practice and preparation. And it's also, it's like an offering to yourself, but it's also an offering to the medicine to come in, having taken this time to intentionally prepare.
And how long is that prep? 2 days, weeks, months?
It's like 5 to 7 days for combo.
Okay. So that's got to be manageable for most everyday people, I assume.
I mean, it's challenging. Like
It's
no
challenging,
gluten,
yeah.
no dairy, low salt, no sugar,
fermented foods, no gluten.
no fermented food, no alcohol, no cannabis, and like for the majority of Americans these days, I would say there's like a mild alcohol addiction across the board and
Sure.
like a very strong sugar addiction across the board. So it actually, I would say, and even for me, I find dieta to be like almost more challenging than the journey sometimes, especially living in the world that we live in. Like if you stick me in the jungle for a week and you say I can't have those things, like fine, set and setting, but
Set and setting.
trying to maneuver here and like show up to work with energy and enthusiasm and no caffeine, right? It's like could be really challenging for some folks. And it's really more a process of like learning to be gentle and kind and patient with yourself through that. We like one time we were in a ceremony in New York and there's this young woman and we I think Dre like blew rapé, which is sacred tobacco medicine. It's shamanic stuff. We blow it up the up our own noses and then up other people's noses as a form of grounding into the space and really like clearing out and quieting the monkey mind. And you do it one nostril at a time. Sometimes there's like a double applicator, but Dre blew the first nostril and this girl just shot up from her little cushion and was like, oh, I have to go. I gotta go. No, I have to go. We were like, no, you'll be fine. It's okay. Like just breathe through the discomfort, blah, blah. And she was like, no, I have to tell you, I didn't do my dieta. And we were like, that's okay. She was like, I can't be here. I'm not allowed to do the medicine because I lied and I didn't do my dieta. And we were like, no, that was part of the lesson. You're fine.
Right. That's funny.
You know? But yeah, that it can be like a really, really challenging, especially if you're like feeling some resistance about doing this thing that's going to be challenging and uncomfortable and you've never done. So then your go-to coping mechanisms are to like soothe yourself through or really distract yourself through food, news, social media, giving your energy to conversations you don't need to, than to be like cut all of that off and sit with all of your feelings before putting yourself in a very challenging journey is like it sort of starts to stack and like accumulate on itself.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I was thinking about like, and I agree with Charlotte, like dieta can be, you know, it's challenging because I'm saying no to myself, like in very extreme ways. And there was one diet that I did, and cannabis, you know, so cannabis is something that if something for therapeutic reasons, you know, 2 micrograms is what you need for therapeutic dose, just not getting intoxicated. But in this one, I found myself getting into these really challenging conversations, and then I would want to consume cannabis, but there was no cannabis available. And so then I thought, well, why am I getting in this challenging conversation in the first place? Like the issue was not that I couldn't smoke cannabis. It was that I kept on exposing to myself this unnecessary debate with a friend about whatever we were debating this week, you know. And so so it was like it gave me some. So there's a great opportunity to really see your patterns. Like, so if you are having a struggle with something, instead of getting upset about it, like be compassionate and gentle with them. Be like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I'm really struggling with sugar. What does sugar provide me with? Why? Right? And it's get curious about this stuff instead of feeling victimized by these things and angry about and frustrated. Approach it with ease. And I'm finding the more I do that, the easier it is to let go of those things that don't serve me.
Yeah, yeah, that reflection, and I think that's huge, and I think that's why people need to have the right guides in this arena, right? Because it's going to allow you that opportunity. You're going to create that space for people to look at that, the underlying reasons.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, these things. This is a challenging conversation because because I get it. Like there is a lot of need in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tremendous amount of anxiety and depression and illnesses of all different kinds in this country. So there's this need, and most of us don't have an Amazon rainforest in our backyard, or Lakota sweat Nipi, right? So people want this healing, and so in their excitement, then they'll do a mushroom ceremony, and then tomorrow they're practicing then now they're serving other people medicine. Yeah, and I get it's not always because of a person's ego. It might just be because like there's a need there, and they're being proactive and filling that need. However, there's significant amount of harm a person can cause if they are not trained well, if they don't have lots of experience. And when I say training, really, what I'm really saying is experience, right? There's a little bit of structure in the process of shamanism, but there's a whole lot of experiential training and support by elders that really help amplify your experience and support you not causing trauma to yourself and to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, that even the word sensei, right? It means one who comes before, and it's kind of that role. Like I've walked this. I'm doing the thing, not just telling you to do the thing.
Today I was in a like discovery call with someone. We have this, you want to set up a call for 15 minutes and ask us some questions and feel the vibes. We'll do that with you. And so I'm talking about combo, and the guy is like, so is this something that you do? And I was like, yeah, this is not like a clinical practice where I'm prescribing a bunch of prescriptions that I've never tried and have no idea what the impact will be on my body. And like, this is years of sitting in this and peeling back the layers and understanding the depths of where one might go on these journeys before ever stepping into a place of like supporting others going to those places. And that is a sort of hot topic these days in the growing psychedelic space
everywhere.
Since there is so much clinical like quote unquote advancement happening, really just clinical borrowing of ancestral research and put into a medical space. But like, I mean, we're even in a training program where I'm mentoring or tutoring the next cohort, and there's somebody who is about to start serving ketamine who's never sat with ketamine. And this like, and that's acceptable in a clinical setting. That you would have never tried the medicine. I mean, doctors are not like taking all the SSRIs that they're prescribing, and they're not taking the ADHD medicine that they're prescribing. So it's been interesting watching like others try to maneuver into that conversation with this person about like, do you feel like it's ethical to be taking people to a place that you've never been psychologically, and spiritually as well. So
and the problem is everybody with over 10 acres of land like is having like private shamanistic experiences, like bringing all their friends and charging a couple $1,000 for the weekend. And it's like this crazy business. I'm sure you guys know it's a booming business, and it's like absurd, but here we are. And that makes the charlatan versus shaman thing a hell of a lot harder to answer, doesn't it? Because you got all these people that are, but your questions I love. Who doesn't like a good list, right? Like, here's a checklist, man. Go down this list before you do anything. But it's great. I mean, it's a relatable thing, right? You can hand somebody a list. They can take it off your website. Like, that's an easy thing to pass on, right? Like, even for people who have no self-awareness whatsoever, right? You could, and anybody could look at a list, right?
Yeah. And that's not an exhaustive list. Like that's just a scratching the surface. And the other thing that we, obviously it's a little bit harder to translate. But I think also people should really respect their intuition. If even if I answer all the questions in the way you want to hear them, if there's something in your being that's like, this is not the right time or the right being to support me, like listen to that intuitive sense, right? On the other hand,
I think that's the first bullet point is like, yes, ask these questions and also please listen to your intuition while you ask these questions.
Yeah, listen to intuition. And on the other hand, like also be aware that, because these experiences are uncomfortable for a little while, that it is a rare case that people come to ceremony without a little bit of fear, which I would encourage them to transmute into respect. Like respect for this is not, but and that's so don't just because you're feeling a little anxious about ceremony and think, oh, this means I'm not supposed to. Yeah, no, that's all. Every time I sit with combo, every time I have like a little tiny sniff, I'm like, it might be time for combo, and my body's like, no, we're good, we're good. We're good on the combo. We're healthy now.
I literally messaged you this morning. I messaged Dre. I was like, my throat's been hurting since yesterday. I haven't slept through the night for 2 nights. I have the sniffles. And I was like, I'm going to do all the other things, but you might have to come over and sit a far distance from me while you watch me serve myself combo. And I was like, but I really don't want it to come to that. And then I feel better.
That's hilarious. I really don't.
Get your attention. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Exactly. Thank you for that nap.
Yeah.
No combo needed. I was like, okay.
That is funny. That is hilarious. So, Tom, when did you sign up? When's your next one? Like, what's?
Yeah. We're gonna start talking to them about some other stuff, actually. Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, guys, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Oh no! You do it. You were keying it up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, man, I really appreciate you guys taking time. I could literally talk to you guys for a day and a half, but yeah, this is all good things must come to a close because I don't want to keep you all. It's already 7:15 at night. I mean, come on, you got stuff to do.
We're like 30 minutes away from my bedtime.
Yeah.
But guys, I cannot, I literally, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough for sharing time with us. Like, this was awesome. It was very informative. And I've been dying. I've known you guys were coming on for a couple of weeks. I'm like, when are they coming? Which week is that again? I cannot wait to have this conversation. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks
for being here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. And I just want to say, look, there's the beauty of our practice is there's a lot of mystery, but this is very accessible to every human being, right? So you don't have to romanticize anybody outside of yourself. Like these are our practices. This is for all of us to. The key is that everyone understands that the practice of inducing a non-ordinary state is not just about you. It's not about your perceived pathology. It's about healing yourself so that you can be a greater participant in the healing of the rest of us. Right. So if you just do one without the other, then you have narcissism, right? And then you continue to perpetuate structures of oppression. If you see that it is your job to heal yourself and then support the greater healing of our culture, our species, then you come to this place of a tremendous amount of compassion for yourself and love for yourself, and then you spread that love to the rest of us. Right.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really well said. Charlotte, any closing words from you?
Oh, I am unmuted. Great. No, thank you so much. It's always a privilege to be in these conversations and to be sharing more about the work that we do. So thank you for making the time.
Indeed.
Oh, God. We just love any time I don't have to talk much. That's great. Yeah. But no, can you guys just give a shout out to your website, how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find us at theancestorproject.com, and we are on Instagram and Facebook as The Ancestor Project. We have, we host medicine circles and combo ceremonies here in Baltimore, and we're working on some other fun offerings for later this year. So please come check us out.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks again. Guys, do us a favor when you get off, just leave your leave this browser open until you see that little party go off and say it's 100% uploaded. And that's the favor I ask of you. And otherwise, have a wonderful evening. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.